Hey there, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger. The statement, the government lies to you in 2023 is not the same statement as the government lies to you in 2015. It's not the same statement as the government lies to you in Y2K or 1976. They're completely different statements. (1976) was the year that we moved to Willow Springs, Illinois. The realization that our government assassinated John F. Kennedy and then used the Warren Commission to lie to us, use the, what do they call that? Autopsy to lie. Is your government lies to you in 2023 type of statement. That's not a 1976 statement. 1976, you're still thinking that Oswald did it, that maybe the mob was involved. You know, maybe Oswald was a communist, and now last night I was watching a documentary, and they used the term broken arrow, which they said was an incident relating to a nuclear weapon that did not result in a nuclear war. But it was nonetheless an incident of note relating to a nuclear weapon that does not relate to a detonation or a war. When I heard the definition of broken arrow, my jaw dropped, because this took me back to an incident in my childhood, which was the seed of making a documentary called The Secret that I put together in 2015. I'm very proud of The Secret. It's the best thing I ever made. It's a challenging piece. It challenges the viewer to hit the red X button and not consume it. It's deliberate with that in the first 10 minutes. It's just trying to get you to not watch it. And it branches out in different directions, telling different stories. It comes back around with everything coming together nicely at the end, with proof that your government lies to you. In some of these instances, they're doing it for the right reason, good reasons. And you have, well, what would it be like if you grew up in a little town, you had a run-in with your chief of police, where they didn't give you a break. They threw you in the clink for speeding. And then you find out that the same person, your chief of police, is a murderer, and that he's been working for the mob, or organized crime. So when you approach The Secret, you need to approach it with an open mind. You need to consume it. You need to step away from it and let it sizzle in. Let it like that cake when it's done cooking, it'll like settle. You need to let that happen, and then maybe even go back and watch it again. Is what I would recommend. Now, last night when I discovered the meaning of the term broken arrow, I was shocked, and I went and started doing some searching. I'll go on Google and start. And typically, it's difficult because there is a town in Oklahoma called Willow Springs. The town where I grew up is Illinois, Willow Springs. So there's two Willow Springs, one in Illinois, one in Oklahoma. And the Oklahoma Willow Springs has a real estate agent called Broken Arrow. So if you type in Willow Springs Broken Arrow, you get page after page after page after page after page after page after page of real estate listings. Last night, I added 2 letters, IL, Illinois, Willow Springs, Illinois, Broken Arrow. And there it comes. An LA Times article from 1990, which backs up everything that I said in The Secret. So if you're one of my subscribers or people here that you have not watched The Secret, I don't know what to tell you. It's the best thing I've ever made. I know some of my friends, like I've begged some of my friends to watch it and they still haven't watched it because it's 43 minutes long. Again, I really had no leg to stand on. I didn't have any sources, but now I do. So we're just gonna pop over, and I'm going to Los Angeles Times, June 24th, 1990. Bob Sector, Willow Springs, Illinois. Like an eerie jungle ruin, the strange but remarkable legacy of the Palos Park Forest Reserve has been covered for decades in a tangle of weeds and underbrush. To the unsuspecting eye, there is little to suggest that anything top secret or dangerous went on here. On any warm weekend day, the woods outside this southwest Chicago suburb are filled with hikers, cyclists, equestrians, picnicking, church groups, and young lovers out for a stroll, and maybe a little bit more. Beneath the soil, the Palos Preserve is strikingly different from any other recreation area in the nation. Just a few feet from the hiking paths, unprotected by so much as a fence and marked by only a few graffiti-stained stone signs, lies the nation's first nuclear waste dump. It is a graveyard for residue from the Manhattan Project, the crash World War II atomic bomb program, which moved here shortly after scientists first split the atom in a crude reactor under the football stands at the University of Chicago. That first reactor was dismantled and rebuilt in the Forest Preserve, which the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had leased from Cook County. Soon, a slightly more sophisticated reactor was added to the complex. Years later, the remains of both were buried in the woods along with the contaminated equipment, animal carcasses, and hazardous chemicals used in early nuclear research. Government experts insist that the dump poses no hazard, despite its primitive nature and minor groundwater contamination, which so far is local. Some environmental activists disagree, and they would like the waste removed at a potential cost of tens of millions of dollars from any kind of public policy point of view, having radioactive material sitting around in a public forest reserve is a bad idea, said Carolyn Raffensperger, director of the Illinois Sierra Club. State and federal inspectors regularly monitor the area, even though the reactors were decommissioned and the federal government relinquished the site decades ago. But serious radiation and toxic leaks at a more sophisticated nuclear weapons plant have triggered a broad re-examination of the industry's overall environmental record. And that probe is now stretching back to the harried and mysterious dawn of the atomic age. For the first time since the area was returned to county control in 1956, federal inspectors this summer will survey up to 200 acres of woodland in search for radioactive litter. The effort was triggered last month when state inspectors went poking through the brush outside of what had been the long-abandoned perimeter of Site A, as the 19-acre research facility was dubbed by military authorities. On the ground, inspectors stumbled across an egg-sized lump of pure uranium, the kind that would have been used to fuel the first reactor. Also scattered through the area were shards of laboratory beakers, scrap metal, and blocks of graphite, a common material used to moderate atomic reactions in those early days. Only the uranium was reactive, and at that just barely. "We are mounting an effort to find out what is out there," said Brian Quirk, a spokesman for the Department of Energy, which inherited responsibility for safety at the site from other agencies. This fall, a federal Tiger team of Department of Energy experts is to visit nearby Argonne National Laboratory to audit its environmental practices. Quirk said that the members of the team may also review safety questions involving the forest reserve. Because of its age and primitive nature of the materials involved, the government experts insist that the Palos Forest dump poses little danger to the public. But in recent years, at least 2 picnic wells in the park have been closed. The wells were found to be contaminated by small amounts of radioactive tritium, a nuclear byproduct that behaves like water. The tritium levels were within the federal drinking water standards, but high enough for concern. Minute amounts of strontium-90 have also been detected in the river bottom sediment near what is known as Plot M, a separate 150 by 140 foot dump on a hilltop where high-level contaminants from activities at Site A were disposed of until 1949. Small quantities of plutonium, technetium, cesium, and uranium have also been found at isolated spots in the forest reserve at levels so low it's difficult to tell whether they came from Plot M or from pervasive fallout sprinkled during 1950s atmospheric nuclear tests. Officials say the criticism of the government's handling of the problem is a bum rap. They cite several reasons. The atomic bomb project was conceived as a mission of national survival, so safety concerns at the time were secondary. The dangers of radiation exposure wasn't as deeply appreciated during those years, and advances in detection equipment have made it possible to pinpoint sources of radiation that would have escaped scrutiny in the past. "We are still paying for winning World War II," says Rich Allen, an official in the Illinois Department of Nuclear Safety involved in radiation sampling work. The Army Corps of Engineers didn't take environmental impact studies. They did what was needed. To apply modern-day environmental standards to what happened is wrong. In a sense, if environmental concerns of a sort were what brought the Manhattan Project to Palos Preserve in the first place. The first sustained atomic reaction took place at the university on December 2nd, 1942. Since they were breaking new ground, scientists working on the project weren't exactly sure how the radiation might affect the surrounding area. To be on the safe side, they decided to move the project out of the city. They found a site about 20 miles southwest of Chicago on county-owned land, once used as a Girl Scout camp. At this time, it was remote. It was one of the highest spots in the mostly flat metropolitan Chicago area, As improbable as it now sounds, military officials consider the elevation important because if they could help them spot any advancing Japanese invasion force and give them time to sabotage the complex. In all, 1,025 acres of land were leased for the facility, but most of it was never developed. After the war, the Site A became the original location of Argonne, one of the country's premier nuclear research facilities. Site A was shut down in 1954 when Argonne moved to its present location. Reactor fuel and heavy water were shipped to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee for disposal. But parts of both reactors, including the biological cement shield, were dumped into a 50-foot deep pit at Site A and covered with dirt. From 1944 to 49, much of the high-level radioactive waste generated at Site A was buried in 6-foot deep trenches at the nearby Plot M. Not until 1956, when the area was decommissioned and returned to the county, was a protective cap added. Concrete side walls and a foot-thick concrete slab were poured over Plot M, the waste to protect it from leaching effects of rain and melting snow. No protection was added to the bottom, however. The recent uranium fuel discovery has led officials to speculate that there may have been a third dump of some kind in the vicinity apart from Site A. Finding evidence of such a disposal site will be one of the goals of the summer survey. The broader safety concern is a long-term hazard that waste pose to water supplies. From the government standpoint, there is no danger. Experts acknowledge that a plume of low-level contaminants is inching its way down from Plot M towards a small stream bed, but they insist that the migration is so slow that it would be many years, if ever, that those particles could reach water resources that could lead to wells outside the park. And by then, they say the radioactivity would have dissipated. Although some homes in the area have private wells, most are linked to the municipal system that draws water from Lake Michigan. The degree of which the water is contaminated in that area around Plot M is quite wide and deep, said Allen of the Illinois Nuclear Agency, but nobody is drawing water from it right now. Critics discount such assurances. They say that they say that the Energy Department's credibility has been undermined by its spotty record in dealing with environmental problems at more prominent waste facilities. How can they say it's all low-level radiation when they don't even have a complete records of what's buried out there? Asked Martin Murray of Broken Arrow, an environmental action group. There was a time when many Americans assumed if the government said something that it was true, but that time is gone. The DOE solution to pollution is delusion. Broken Arrow wants both Site A and Plot M excavated and the waste removed, an undertaking the group contends the government estimated could cost $500 million. Quirk of the DOE said the 1980 study projected the cost to be about $10.8 million, though he'd acknowledge it would be much higher today. Cost aside, the audit of the site's environmental impact released last year concluded that it posted no hazard to the surrounding community. Indeed, the report said to dig up the waste and move them would be far riskier than to leave them alone. Whenever you move material or bring it to the surface, there are increased chance of exposure. Every bit of exposure, no matter how small, involves some risk. Illinois, though the Energy Department is not likely to budge on removal, environmentalists have succeeded in pressuring the state into paying for water quality tests on private wells in the area. About 65 private well owners as far as 5 miles from the park have signed up for the tests, which should begin soon. While they welcome the testing program, Willow Springs officials appear dubious about the claims of Broken Arrows and its allies. We're confident that the necessary monitoring is going on, said Bob Nellis, the village administrator. We're not concerned, we're not alarmed. The DOE has been upfront with us. Environmentalists, on the other hand, see that this view as short sighted. I don't want to be an alarmist, but we're talking about a proven, known human carcinogen. The more you're exposed, the more likelihood you're going to get cancer. Quirk disagreed. The place shouldn't be feared. The place is looked at as a place of history. Guys who worked here were pioneers. It's a historical gem. Palos Park Forest Reserve site of nuclear waste from Manhattan Project is used as a public park. Federal inspectors may examine the area for the first time in 34 years this summer. So my story of this goes back to opening a letter in 1980, I think it was, when I got that letter. It was addressed to us. We lived on Dugan Avenue in Willow Springs, and it was from Broken Arrow. And it had a real funky looking stamp. The Broken Arrow stamp looked funky. It had arrow on it, a broken arrow. And I opened it. I never opened my parents' mail, but I knew this wasn't this wasn't Derek Prince or one of these faith healer guys begging for money, which was the mail we usually got. So I opened it. And I couldn't believe what I read inside. And that was the beginning, that was the seed of me making this documentary that's called The Secret. And that's on my Vimeo, it's on my BitChute. And if you haven't watched that in its entirety, I don't know why you haven't done that yet. Yeah, it's 43 minutes, but it's worth it. The Secret is... it's really something else. And the point of The Secret illustrates how we are lied to. The world is not a safe place. And there is proof. The proof is shown at the end of The Secret. There is a reveal, and it is proven, which is most of these conspiracy theory things, it's just that, it's theory. They don't have any proof at the end of it. So I'm not proud or celebrating some like, oh, isn't this great? It's tragic because there was people that got sick. I lost my father, and through making this, I met some people. One person looked at a topographical map and saw that the spot where they lived, where there was a rash of all these weird childhood cancers and all these people died, they got out of there, but that was at a low point. Now, in that article, they were saying, well, everybody has Lake Michigan water. That wasn't the case. Everybody in Willow Springs had well water. There wasn't city water in Willow Springs. They found out about this and they brought the city water in, but it was already too late. You know, there was like my friend, he was a little older than me. He met a girl that was our next live. Actually, we bought the house she grew up in. They had a kid, childhood leukemia. The kid almost died. Had to have all these treatments. So and again, I don't know. Was that the effect of, this? I do know that all of the wells, like they had wells at all the forest reserves, they were all capped off, all of them. So, and like Broken Arrow was sending letters out, and there was a meeting at the town hall, and I went to the meeting with my mom. Now I'm a kid, okay? Broken Arrow people stood up and started asking a question. They had a Q&A. They stood up and started yelling out their question, and they had Willow Springs had hired private security. These giant, huge guys came and grabbed these guys and carried them out of the meeting. So, I was 15 when my dad died, And I used to look this up on the internet and look for information about this. And I found information about it. I never saved it, but there was the results of the testing that showed all of the heavy metals and the contamination that existed. I made the documentary The Secret, and that's really the gist of this video. Is you should just watch that. But some of the things that I discuss in The Secret are Broken Arrow and these wells that were capped off. And I didn't really have any sources. And now I do. Now I do. I found an article that talks about it that's still on the internet. So I have to save all this and put it in on my hard drive of stuff I want to keep, just because it's interesting and it's about the area where I grew up. Willow Springs came to be known as the land of the healing waters. They had an Indian guy, Tom Greenwood, who was a Scotsman, come and do a ceremony. He was half Indian, half Scottish, but he came and did a ceremony and dedicated these huge boulders that they said were there. That they dug them out of the retention pond and put them in a line, and they said that these boulders were there. It was about a block and a half away from where I grew up, and we used to explore and ride our dirt bikes and our BMXs and snake hunt back. Those rocks weren't back there until they dug them out of the retention pond. But yeah, they claimed that this was the land of the healing waters, and that that was right when they brought the city water, and it was right after my dad died from cancer, and they brought the city water in, and these homes weren't selling at this development, and they said, oh yeah, it's the land of the healing waters. So there's been some people making YouTube videos about this community, Willow Springs, saying that there's Indians having powwows on every street corner, and that there's burial grounds everywhere. It's not the case. As far as I know, I wasn't able to find any of that on any maps or anything. But Tom Greenwood claims that he was in the basement of another Indian's house who had a deerskin map that was painted. And that's how he came to know that this location of these rocks were there, where it was our backyard as kids, and they weren't there. So my impression of all of this is that they knew, they covered it up. Children got sick. Some children died, and there were adults that got cancer that died too. And that's all still there. It's all still there. Specifically Site M, Redgate Woods on Archer Avenue, not Palos. Is that Palos?
What? Oh, I think it's probably technically is.
It's Willow Springs though. It's on Archer Avenue. And like the fact that the rumor that I had heard was that the concrete cracked. They said that there was no base. They just poured concrete on it. So it's like, it just gets even worse the more you read about it. Anyway, you guys, this is no laughing matter. I mean, I was 15 when my dad died, and I don't know if that drinking that water or living underneath the high tension wires like we did had anything to do with the cancer. I don't want to scapegoat that and think, oh, it was all that project. I mean, this is a ridiculous thing because it's waste that's left over from the first experiments with this stuff, and they supposedly needed it to end the war. So it's a really, really hot potato talking about this stuff. It really is. all that I know is I was compelled and I was drawn to find that secret waterfall. That was destiny for me to find that. I found it on my birthday. It was destiny for me to find that. I was called. I know certain things in my life have been weird. There's certain things, you know, and it's not a lot of stuff. It's not like every time I'm, oh, that was me being pulled by psychic forces or demons or angels. It's not often that I'll say, well, that was weird, or that there was more going on there, more to the picture than meets the eye. But me finding that waterfall, that definitely was. Definitely was. So obviously I made that I ended up making that movie, The Secret, for the same reason, which is probably the same reason I'm making this one right now. I watched this Bermuda Triangle documentary last night, and they said Broken Arrow, and they explained what it was, and then I finally used the right search term to bring up this Los Angeles Times article that I've never read before. The only other article that I was able to find was a Chicago Tribune article, which was much more vague, and they didn't mention Broken Arrow in it. They didn't talk about the wells being capped off. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. You guys be safe. And like I said in the beginning of this video, this isn't a channel conspiracy theory thing that I do here. It's not. It's not what I'm all about. But we need to arm ourselves and protect ourselves. Arm yourself with the truth. Peace.